Hello again. America's new national security strategy is more focused on the Western Hemisphere than it is in Europe. That is to say, the half of the world which may be found to the west of the Greenwich Meridian, which passes through London. In other words, the United States is now looking at North and South America, the Caribbean, the Atlantic, and the Eastern Pacific more, rather than fretting too much about Europe, Asia, and Africa. This is reflected in the suggestions lately made about America wishing to control Greenland and perhaps even Canada. We really must hope that this does not signal a new mood of isolationism and withdrawal of interest in the affairs of Europe. The document warns that Europe faces what is described as civilisational erasure. That is to say, a Europe which is no longer distinctly European, but more of an Asian and African continent. Most people in Europe, and certainly in Britain, regard this as a simply terrifying possibility that European civilization will crumble and fade. But truth to tell, the signs are that this is already happening. In other words, the United States national security strategy is not peering into the future so much as it is describing the present. I give a link to it in the description to this video. Let me read out this summary and see if any viewers can honestly disagree with what is said. The larger issues facing Europe include activities of the European Union and other transnational bodies that undermine political liberty and sovereignty, migration policies that are transforming the continent and creating strife, censorship of free speech and suppression of political opposition, cratering birth rates, and loss of national identities and self-confidence. Should present trends continue, the continent will be unrecognizable in 20 years or less. As such, it is far from obvious whether certain European countries will have economies and militaries strong enough to remain reliable allies. Many of these nations are currently doubling down on their present power. Well, this sounds very much to me as though the Americans are signaling that if Europe doesn't change track, then the various countries will be useless as allies because their military forces will be weak and they will lack the political will for anything much. The implication in this country doesn't really bear thinking about because if traditional British civilization does go, then there is no single culture standing ready to replace it. Certainly, Islam will try to take advantage of weakness in our national identity, and that it's already happening. We can see the encroachment of Islam on what our own culture. But there are so many other cultures, nationalities, and ethnic groups flourishing here now that Islam would only be able to rule a minority of the country, maybe one or two cities. More likely, be the balkanization of Britain into small statelets, each holding sway in a small geographical area. We already see something of the kind in London, of course. Consider an incident in the East London district of Whitechapel in October 2021, for instance. Located in the London borough of Tower Hamlets, Whitechapel is a predominantly Muslim area containing many Bengalis and Pakistanis. From time to time, notices appear on lampposts warning that this is a Sharia area, one where alcohol and gambling are forbidden. Groups of vigilantes keep an eye out for trouble from outsiders, that is to say, non-Muslims and members of other communities. Meanwhile, and further south of the river, there are districts containing many people of African and Caribbean heritage, and sometimes excursions are made across the Thames by enterprising young bandits who feel that there might be easier and safer pickings in Asian parts of the city than among their own kind. On the evening of Sunday, 19th of October, a clash between a small group of black men and Muslim vigilantes in Whitechapel led to summary justice of a kind seldom before seen in Britain. The Quranic punishment of amputating the hand of a thief was executed at the curbside. Another of the raiders was stabbed. This then is the true face of London's multicultural society, rather than the vibrant mixing of cultures and shared experience of each other's traditions. The city has been informally divided between the newcomers into self-contained zones. In boroughs such as Redbridge, those from the Indian subcontinent tend to settle. Even here, separate communities are the rule. In the east of the borough, Seven Kings is the acknowledged territory of Sikhs, while the streets around the centre of Ilford are occupied more by Hindus. As one moves to the west of the borough, more Muslims are found. In the same way, although boroughs like Hackney and Haringey have many districts which appear to be chiefly black, these too are split along tribal lines, a condition contributing distinctly to the so-called Postcode wars. Those living in the E8 postal district will launch drive-by shootings against the inhabitants of N17 or E9. It is a large-scale version of this which faces our country if present trends in demographic change continue, or, which is even worse, accelerate. I can't really blame the Americans for considering withdrawing from Europe.